each province you would have what we call a Director of Public Prosecutions. So the person overall would be the National Director of Public Prosecutions, and then at every province you would have somebody who falls directly under him, would be the Provincial Director of Public Prosecutions. In a place like Gauteng, for example, you would have two, because there's a North Gauteng and there's a South Gauteng. And similarly in the Eastern Cape, you would have one, say, for Eastern Province, but you would have one from Tata. So yes, that is where all prosecutors resort under the National Prosecuting Authority. It's really what they call is a program of the Department of Justice, which, as you know, is a national government department. As for myself, the question was, what did I do before
joining this office? What
well, obviously, I studied. That's what I did before that.
Okay.
I commenced my studies at the University of the Western Cape in 1982. Years where I enrolled for what was then, it has been phased out over the years, a bachelor's degree in law. They just call it BA law. And that was a degree for 3 years. After I obtained that degree, I just carried on with a further degree, which is an LLB, which we done over 2 years. I did over 2 years. So I graduated with a second degree in 1987. And in that same year that I joined what was then just called the Department of Justice as a prosecutor.
Okay.
It was not initially my plan. When I studied, the idea was to, when I'm done with my studies, to become an attorney. Ultimately, I should become an advocate.
What is the difference, if you don't mind me asking?
The difference? Well, you know, in South Africa and I think in many other countries, they have this dual system. Few things have changed, but essentially the difference is the advocate is one who you would call, in medical terms, you would call that's a specialist.
Yeah.
So, for example, you would go and see a GP to deal with your common ails. But when it comes to something special, like you would have somebody who's a dermatologist, who's a specialist. So your GP knows some things about the skin, but he would not be the specialist.
Okay.
Similarly, in legal terms, the attorney is the one that you will go and see for the, no disrespect, but to the normal type of case. But when it comes to something special, maybe there's a constitutional issue that's going to arise in the case. And then that person will usually go and rather get an advocate.
Okay.
But practically, if you are a client, for example, that has a criminal case, and you want somebody to appear for you, you cannot, similarly like with a specialist, you cannot go directly to the specialist, to the advocate. You have to be referred to the advocate.
Okay.
So you would go to the attorney would study your case, and he would say, no, this is a specialist type of case, and this is something that the advocate must deal with, and then he refers the matter to the advocate. So he's what they call him the instructing attorney. He instructs an advocate to appear on behalf of the client, sometimes just in the High Court, for example. But nowadays, the little thing that has changed is that attorneys can nowadays also appear in the High Court. In the old days, an attorney could not appear in the High Court, only the advocate. So yes, that's in a long way, it's not briefly the difference.
Okay.
So that was initially my aim. I think part, maybe in essence, what changed it for me, it started with really because I had a bursary for 2 years.
Okay.
2 years actually, 3 years. And so, you actually have to work off that bursary. So you have to work for the state. Well, that's where I started with the state. But of course, after, basically I worked for 3 years because that was the time that I had to work off the bursary. In a sense, you could say I became comfortable. I was there, I was earning a relatively good salary, and so I just stayed there. But I must also say that I enjoyed the work. So in as much as that is what I wanted to do initially, not wanted to do initially, for me, enjoyment is a large part for me of the work. You must enjoy what you do. Often it's not really about, look, money is a factor, but it's for me not always the factor that should really be determining whether you should rather do a certain type of work.
Yeah.
So I started, it's now, I think if my math is correct, I think it's 27 years?
Yes,
yeah. I think it will be 27 at the end of this year, because I started on the 1st of January, 1987. And I've grown in the organization, but the organization itself has grown as well.
Yeah.
It has become more specialized. Much of what you would say, like in the police, you will have a unit dealing with, say, with stock theft. So you have this is police, so you go to the police and you complain about a rape case. And so, well, anybody can investigate that case. Now you can specialize. So in the NPA, you also have specialized units. Now I fall under a unit which is known as the National Prosecution Services.
Okay.
That essentially is the prosecutors. You see, at this level, they would call us, like you address me as Mr. Jacob, and I'm a senior public prosecutor. When you go to other units, but even in the prosecuting services like the DPP office, the DPP, as I said, really stands for Director of Public Prosecution. And the Director of Public Prosecution has a staff complement. So there's an office that he or she runs. It's in a different building. But the courts fall under him.
Okay.
So how it's divided, you would have your national director, and he's got a staff complement. And so you would have 2 deputy national directors, for example. So then you have, under them, you will have the province, you have a director of public prosecution. And you also have what we call specialist directors. So they're not, for example, in charge of a particular province, but they're a specialist director in a certain, like he might be a specialist director for, so we just call it, for specialist offences. So they might feel that is a unit that we have to start, so you get those complicated cases and this unit must work with it. But this person is in charge of that unit. That's basically what it means. And so when you come now, so now you come to a province. So now let's just say you come to our province, the Western Cape is the province. And under the Western Cape you have now the DPP with his staff.
Yes.
So he's got deputy directors of public prosecutions as his staff. So they you call them advocates, so and so. But then he also he's in charge of the courts as well. So in the Western Cape we have all kinds of courts.
Yes.
But now what they do is they will be divided into the province into clusters. So you would have a small place somewhere in the Karoo with 1 prosecutor. But that particular office falls under a cluster. So you might have 1 prosecutor here, and then there is another area there with 2 prosecutors, and there is one with 3 prosecutors. But they are different offices, but they fall under the same cluster.
Okay.
So for example, in the Western Cape, you've got 5 clusters. Cape Town is a cluster. Now, Cape Town itself consists of 2 offices. It's Cape Town itself, the main office here where I'm sitting.
Yes.
And we've got another office, Goodwood, which falls under our cluster.
Okay.
Then you've got Belleville. Now Belleville has got a lot of small stations falling under it. It will be Belleville obviously as the biggest station. But then you will have a station like Ceres, for example. No, not Stikland.
Okay.
Stikland falls under Belleville, but I mean Ceres. It's an office on its own, but it falls under Belleville.
Okay.
So then you have Mrs. Plain, which is the 3rd one. Then you have Wynberg, which is a big one, which also has lots of smaller, like Paarl. Worcester falls under Wynberg cluster.
Okay.
They may be far away from each other, but they fall under the cluster. That's how it's been divided. And then you have the 5th one, is the one the furthest away from us, which is George, in the Southern Cape. Now there's also smaller stations with 1-man stations, Swellendam, for example, Oudtshoorn, Knysna, and so on. All those places fall under the cluster of George. And in charge of the cluster, there's a specific person whom they call the chief prosecutor. So you would have 5 chief prosecutors, and under the chief prosecutors, the senior prosecutors fall.
Okay.
And under me, there's another prosecutor they call the control prosecutor. And under the control prosecutor, there's a junior court prosecutor.
What
You
a
can see
hierarchy.
That is how the hierarchy works. Right. So, you know, in terms of my own journey, I've worked in various offices, specifically provinces. Essentially, I worked in the Western Cape and I worked in the Eastern Cape, and you know, at the various courts in that centre. As I said, I you know, progressively, the more I worked, I loved the work. I enjoyed the work. And after 27 years, I still do. It's not to say that, you know, you don't have concerns. You do. Everybody has. Money is always an issue with everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't, you know, allow that to impact to such an extent that you begin not to do your work.
Yes.
But, you know, if I have to take it further back and how to start to get into this work, I'm from a very poor area. And it is a kind of, it's a small community. Look, it's what they call it, it's a suburban community. It's not like a farm area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I would attend the local primary school. There's just this, well, essentially there were 3 schools around there, but in our area itself, that's where that school. So everybody who lives in that area
Goes to school.
goes to that school. Look, some went to other schools, but the majority went to that particular school. And, you know, it was poor, you know, in terms of my own upbringing, you know, my mother was, well, not initially, but certainly when I was, before I even started high school, she was a tea lady.
Okay.
And my father was a fisherman.
Mm.
I know it was difficult times because, you know, as fishermen where you work for somebody who's got a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes he doesn't go out, sometimes they do, sometimes they, you know, but look, he was a fisherman, he doesn't look so sort of...
There's no
3
consistent
4 months
income.
It's just like,
Yeah.
no, today you go, and you come back this afternoon, you might come with nothing. So he would have his, what was then, his 1 rand to pay for his train journey, and say 2 rand to come back. Often he came back with nothing, and sometimes he came back with something. So he would come back maybe with fish, right? So, but he was a type of person who would, as he walks down, if it's 100 meters away, he start not selling but giving it to people because they see, hey, Uncle Arthur, you're coming, so he's got his...
so even his humbles you.
Yeah, so he would, you know, look, that wouldn't make anybody happy because you come actually with nothing. At least I could have
Your mother must
sold
be
the fish.
upset.
So basically that was in terms of them. So times were hard. I mean, we were initially 7 children, but quite a number of them. In fact, we're now 3. Because 4 passed away, some were still born, and some probably 6 months if it was that long. So for most of the time we were actually 3.
Yeah.
But you know, it was difficult times.
What motivated you?
I'm the middle of three children. I'm now 51. So my sister is 54, and then my brother is 2 years younger. He's 49. So we're the advanced.
You're in the same age. That's nice.
Yeah, my mother is 77. Now, you know, my father passed away back in 1989.
Okay.
So that basically was my upbringing. And now there's a big difference between the 3 of us. Maybe that's now very relevant for what we are talking about. My sister is a machinist. So she's not learned in the sense that she's got university or...
Yeah.
I mean, I think she didn't make it to high school. My brother, who's 2 years younger, he made it up to what is now grade 10. He never had an interest to go back and maybe do grade 11 and matric and so on. But he is slightly better than she is, in the sense that he doesn't have sort of, he cannot show you a degree. He cannot show you a matric certificate. But, you know, there's all kinds of courses that he's done that enable him to you won't be a prosecutor, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes. Life skills.
Yeah, those type of things. So that's the three of us. For me, my mother was very instrumental in my education. She never had much to give me. You know, instead of okay, what does it cost? 2,000 days or 2,000. Her influence and her role was a lot in terms of encouragement. And I remember, you know, one thing that she said to me was that she doesn't know how she's going to do it. She doesn't want to know, but what she does know is that I'm going to become somebody.
Her heart and someone.
And I think that, you know, those are things that obviously stayed with me. So, in a sense, it was, you know what, I don't think I can disappoint her because she has somehow believed in me. She says she doesn't know how and why and what, but she doesn't know that because if you think about it, she knows. But you don't even have the money now. How can the person actually get it?
Yeah, I get it.
But, you know, it's not about downplaying any role that anybody else has. But I know, you know, like with mothers, they're very close, whether you're the son or the daughter. And so they have that affinity. But, you know, she would, and in other respects, she would, for example, as I said, she was a tea lady, but where she was working, it was an engineering company. And so, I don't want to say she was a busybody, but she would put her ears to the ground and she would listen to what people are saying. And she said to me one day, you know, this thing that you are doing, okay, I got into university, I must say the first year, as nowadays as well, unless you're very brilliant, then you would have got maybe
it's quite challenging
or something like that. So I wasn't that forced, it was also those years. So, but I remember, I think the cost was 520 rand. That was the cost when I studied for the full year. And I didn't have a bursary, but I don't know where she got the money, but somehow we couldn't pay the full price, full amount. I think we probably had probably could pay about 220 bucks. But she paid for my transport, you know, because I travel train, you know, and sometimes, you know, you did a bit of creative traveling and you don't have a ticket, but well, you have to get to the university, so yeah, that's what I sometimes did. But I mean, she paid for that. I don't know where she got the money. Sometimes she had to make loans, which I know, you know, she struggled to repay, but she said, I don't know how, but you will become somebody, so that's what I have to do. So I'm really very grateful for her. You know, today after so many years, as I said, she's 77 years old. You know, she unfortunately had to have a leg amputated recently. And, you know, it's difficult times because it's like you take time to adjust to something as new as that. How do you walk now? And you know what people is, it's if you have that pride, like yesterday, you could stand on your 2 feet, like today you have to sit in a wheelchair. So she has that pride that like anybody has. It's not easy to deal with. But I can tell you that when I was looking at her over the weekend, because I don't live with her. You know, my sister's daughter, her granddaughter in other words, lives with her. So she says she looks after her, but you know, we take her for a weekend or so. And when I looked at her, it reminded me of when I was a student. And it's just like what they call, what's the word that they use? It's like, it's 360 degrees, it comes back.
Yes.
It's like, my mother's not the person who must be looked after. I was a student, she had to look after me. And it's the least that I as a child, and I think generally we as children can do for our parents, that we look after them, and we care for them when they cannot do it themselves. So I'm always grateful for that. So that's in a long sense basically the background. So I'm the only one in the family that really, if you want to call it a chief, there's a chief something, but
Yeah.
it's a formal.
Yeah, in the profession.
Okay, Mr. Jacob, thank you for that. You know, we want to know more about you, the person behind the post.
Right.
So it's good that you took your time to explain about your childhood. We are very grateful for that. But I want to ask you, what other cases are you giving priority to, when you talk about the cases that you go through here? What are the ones that you are giving, attach so much importance to?
Okay. Well, look, you have to understand the setup here. We are here, we are 5 senior prosecutors. Because Cape Town is a big place. So we have the district court and we have the regional court. The district court where I am, there are 3 senior prosecutors and the other 2 is at the regional court. And so we've got different portfolios, things that we concentrate on. I, for one, I deal with what is commonly called environmental cases. We say illegal possession of marine resources, abalone, lobster, those type of things. Plants, people are illegal in certain areas, they're Robben Island and they're supposed to be there. People that will have permits to do certain things. All marine related, but also relating to plants and things like that. I focus a lot of that. For example, I keep a register. So if you ask me, there's a person with a certain name, has he ever been involved in environmental cases? I will be able to tell you if it was in paper. So I have a register where I have the name, I can track that case, what happened to this case. So I would, for example, part of my portfolio would be that I not only have a register, but I assist the prosecutor in the prosecution of that case. I may not be physically in court doing the case, but I advise the prosecutor all along the line. I prepare the charge sheet and so on and so forth. I assist him with, when he addresses the court about what the ideal sentence should be and so on. So that's one of the things there. I also deal with cases that are open against police members. It may not be that the police member is necessarily the guilty one, but essentially it's a member of the public that opens a case, reports a case and says, but this policeman stole my money, or this policeman assaulted me. Those cases come to me. I make decisions in those cases.
Okay.
I also deal with cases which are identified for the purpose of asset forfeiture. Now, asset forfeiture is, in terms of an act, we call it the POCA Act, is the Prevention of Organized Crime Act. And under that act, there's a section that deals with asset forfeiture. Essentially, it means if an accused person, let's say a person is charged for dealing in drugs, but the police have gone into his house and they confiscated 20,000 rand. They don't know whether that money was a gift that they got from somebody or what, but they confiscated. It could be that the money got something to do with the drugs. It could be that, no, but these are the drugs that he sells and this is the money that he gets for that. This act allows us to confiscate that money. And then we can ask for the court to make an order to say that that money is now forwarded to the state. And so essentially that money then is put into a certain account. The abbreviation that is used is CARA. I can't remember the correct name now, but it's a CARA account. And that account, for example, all kinds of money is coming to that account, but where police, not police, but law enforcement is involved. And so that money is deposited into that account. And that is used for law enforcement.
Okay.
So basically we are saying, you know what, we spend a lot of money to track down criminals, to employ people to prosecute criminals. Why can't we take their money where they're involved in crime and we use that money now
to track other criminals?
Because government must obviously give money to the department, isn't it? Just the Department of Justice, there's your budget.
Yes.
As we know, the budget is never enough. But now we get somebody that we convict and we got R1 million out of it. Just think about, okay, King, for example. You've read about this King gentleman. He was involved with SARS. Okay, that's a bit different because SARS is going to pocket that money. But as I said, I deal with the asset forfeiture. So what it entails, I'm what you would call a nodal point. So if you go to Bellville, you might get somebody there who's a nodal point there for cases that's identified in Bellville for purposes of asset forfeiture. So what it means is that, so I would identify, let's say now, here's 3 cases.
Yes.
Where money was confiscated by the police, say in a drug house. And so we monitor these cases. And now we can only make that application after the person has been found guilty, but not yet sentenced. We must do it before sentence, but after conviction, right? Found guilty. And then I ask the court, what should I want the court to make that order? And so that is essentially my job. I monitor those cases. I assist in identifying those cases.
You're Robin Hood.
Not quite. Yeah, when you say you rob Peter to pay Paul. Yeah, maybe something like that. Then I deal with most, if not all, cases of culpable homicide. You know, this is something which I decided on my own. I had a look through these things and I said, in culpable homicide cases, but that's not involving motor vehicles, motor vehicle accidents. We must look after our clients. And so my client is a person who is the complainer. It can be his family. So you might have a family member that comes and sit here and say to you, my husband was killed in a motor vehicle accident. And but somebody must not decide about this case, what's going on. So I said to myself, you know what? And when I looked through it, I found that, so you sitting with one sufferer, you sitting with another, that one sitting with another. You might sit for 100 days with the one, the other one sit 5 days. And I said to myself, but this is a sensitive thing. We're dealing with people's lives here, and people want closure.
Yes.
You don't want to say, no, my husband died 10 years ago, but they're still busy with the case. And then I decided for myself, I'm going to take these cases, and I'm going to decide. You're sitting with one. So, of course, I want to give my prosecutors also exposure. We can't take the work away from them and say, but now I don't know what to do because Jacobs has been doing it all these years. So I share with them. But ultimately, they are the people who's going to conduct the trials if I decide that we must prosecute. And in that I assist him or her as well. But that's one of the things that I do.
Please, sir, before you continue, there's something that I would like to know. This one I would like to read to you. Is there any time that you think of where you feel you made a mistake in prosecuting a person? Or either that you prosecute something that you have rather not, or that you made something that you feel like you should have?
Look, we're not having a record of things, but we're not perfect. So yes, there have been times when I can't give you this or that. But yes, there have been more than one occasion where I think that I made a decision and maybe where I regret that maybe I should have prosecuted somebody but I didn't. And sometimes maybe where I don't know, it's not really that I say somebody that I should not have prosecuted but I did. But there may have been one or two, but really they're in the minority. But cases where perhaps one should have but did not. They may be more. But I'm not talking here about hundreds and hundreds of cases. I'd like to believe in my own ability, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time I must acknowledge that as a human being we err. And so I wouldn't be the first person who would be able to say to you, there were cases that I should not have prosecuted but I did, or cases that I should have but I did not. So the short answer to that is yes, they were occasions.
It's like that. Okay. And so, what is your definition of perfect success?
My definition of perfect justice? Yeah, that's a very interesting question and topic. Because various people have got different understanding of it. I'll give you a broad understanding of justice.
No, sir. I mean perfect success. Are you happy?
Or success.
Success. Are you happy?
Oh, sorry. I thought it said justice. It was success. What is my
perfect definition of success in your life now?
What would be paradise to you? Yeah, I think.
Are you fulfilled? Are you happy where you are?
Yes and no. You know, as I said to you, you look back on 27 years, and I hate to put it like this, but it's one employer. So, in essence, you're dealing with the same. There's little differences, but yes, but it's like you're a prosecutor. You've been a prosecutor for 27 years. Yes, of course, over the 27 years, I've worked in the court. And now I'm not in the court, I'm in an office. So that may be the slight difference, but essentially, I work with the law. The fulfillment, the yes part for me is, after 27 years, I still enjoy it. I enjoy it particularly, I often say to my prosecutors, you know, because our work is managerial, in essence. But I'm more of a prosecutor than well. I'm a manager. Practically I'm more of a manager, but I can tell you, in law, if you ask me, if my prosecutor comes to me now, if I'm sitting in that office and my prosecutor is busy there paging through something, I will ask him. No, I'm not fighting with him. You are busy with a file where you have annexes. And I'm not saying this negatively about my colleagues, because I've got other two colleagues which are seniors, but they won't ask the prosecutor, what are you looking for? But I do. You know why? Because it always interests me. Because I so much want to help my prosecutor. I don't want him to struggle. So I see he's not busy with his energy. That thing is this thing. But now he's looking for something. And so now he pages. So I immediately ask him, what are you looking for? Now he tells me, man, you know what? I am looking for something. I want to charge somebody who the police caught and they took him to the doctor and they had to take a blood sample. As an example, they had to take a blood sample of him. But this man, I refused. He refused. Isn't there something I can charge him with? I said, yes, there is. And I've got the answer for you. Thinking there is. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that that's for me the fulfillment part. That I can be of help. Not only to the prosecutor, I'll come to the member of the problem. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, a gentleman came in here. I don't know if you know the areas, but he's from he's from the West Coast. He works in Langebaan. He's actually from Vredenburg. That would be about, from here, it would be about, say, 120 plus kilometers. Not 150 yet, but yeah. So yeah. But it's an area on its own, it's where people work. But he's actually from another place in the northern Cape, which is about, I would say, about 6+ hours from Cape Town. But because of the unemployment in that area, obviously he moved, not moved, but he was looking for work and somebody said, no, I know somebody. And he ends up there. This guy rocks up here yesterday. Why? He received a summons from the place where he's from. It was for maintenance, for non-support. And then he says, are you Mr. Jacob? I said, yes, I am. What can I help you with? No, you see, I thought I had to see somebody who knows something about something. So I went to the clerk of the court and I asked him, who can I see? I remember I said to him, there are 3 seniors here. Now the clerk of the court knows there are 3 seniors here, but who do they send him to? Now again, this is not disrespect to my colleagues do a lot of work, good work. I'm not saying they, right, but it's like how you experience people. When you know, no, if I go there, no, I know that. It's not about bullying that. It's not only about bullying that guy. He actually knows something about the law up there. So he came to see me, and we started talking. If I'm honest with you, I have to tell you, it took me the better part of an hour plus of my daily work. Now, I could have said, hey, sorry sir, man, maybe just call somebody, he will help us. If I can ask that man to come here now, he can tell his own story to you. And I know what he will tell you. He will tell you, gee, when I came here, I'm telling you, it was like there was something heavy on my shoulder. I said to him, you're going to leave here this afternoon. But I tell you what, it's not going to cost you a cent. I said, no, how is that possible? No, it's not going to cost you a cent. I mean, I can show you, I've got a file that I keep for private calls. Now, we have to pay for our private calls. Now, this gentleman came to me. I made a call on his behalf to the Magistrates Court at the R. That is the place that I'm talking about 6 hours from here. Yeah. And you can see his number is there. There's the number of the court. There's the R.
Yeah.
That was the number that I called. Why did I call the R? He had to be in that court today.
Oh.
And he says to me, Mr. Jacobs, but the R is not a place that you go every go to, so it's not like you just get up a train or a bus, but they're actually giving it tomorrow. But by that time, if I leave tomorrow, I'll be there the day after tomorrow. You can ask one for my arrest.
Yeah.
There are 1, 2, 3. There's a maintenance order in place. We got a lady to go to the court. She wanted 1,000 rand. I did all the investigations here. I mean, the man had everything here from salary slips. I called the boss to confirm. He had accounts here. I called whether it's now Itkas or whatever, and I said, what does the man owe? All of those things. I'm not, I don't have it here now because it's in the file. But I wrote a letter to Continental. The man lives here. There's a maintenance order in place. The lady said, I'll set up the we can offer that. He's going to pay now, but for this month he's going to pay just a lesser amount because the month is it's partially for the month, but 800 he will start paying next month. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you, he was a member of the public. I could easily have saved him.
Yes, not my problem.
And I can tell you, I know it may sound stupid to you, but when I go home, I ask myself, every day, what have I done at work today that is of value to other people?
Yes.
Not about myself. And then I count these things. And often I say, you know what? If there was one person that could help for the day, then I think I've done my job.
Yes.
So if you ask me, in that respect, this is the one thing that I enjoy. And if I have to leave here, I can't say one day. It might be very soon. The only thing that I might miss, because if I go to a unit, like when you go to the unit, so I say the unit, remember I was talking about the NPS, which is the National Prosecution Service. But you get a unit asset forfeiture unit. Remember I was talking about asset forfeiture. There's a unit. They maybe have only 5 or 6 people, but they essentially deal with this type of thing that I'm dealing with here. I feed them. You've got a unit, which they call it a component, but you've got what we call a soccer unit. That is a sexual offences unit. So remember I was talking about how over the years the organization has changed.
Yes.
I was talking about specialization, and the police that I use an example. And with us as well. We've said, you know what, rape and crime against women and children, it's happening all the time. I think we need specialist people.
Yes.
You can have somebody who is he's not dealing with this case, but for him he says, well, this is a woman who was raped, well, she probably deserved it, and so that is maybe how he now deals with the case.
Yes.
So if they say, no, we need to specialize. We need to have people that have specialized training, that would know how do you speak to a rape victim, that she doesn't feel that it's secondary victimization.
Yes.
And then you would lose your case, not because it's a bad case, but maybe because of the way
The approach.
and your approach to the victim. And so I just feel when I go to these units now, what I will not have is the member of the family, the member of the family running to my office.
The human contact.
We complain because I was not busy with this thing. Now this man runs in here. You complain, and I'm human. I do. But I don't fight with him. I tell my colleague, today I couldn't get a lot done. You know why? Because this person came into my office like the guy yesterday. But yeah. So yes, so I still enjoy the work, but the no part. That was the yes part. The no part is really, I do realize at the same time that you have to grow. Sometimes it's a good thing that you're 110 years in one type of work, but I think for yourself, and I do feel like that,
Feel you need
Into
more
the
adventure,
past,
maybe.
I have.
Yeah.
I must tell you that
Coming
I
to
have.
that, yes.
Mm.
I'd like to know, say, what you do in your leisure time, you know, when you are not
I wish I
working.
could do it. Look, nowadays in my leisure time, I advise people a lot. So where I live, I'm not quite part of the because of lots of other things that I'm busy with. I advise the neighborhood watch, the local
Okay.
neighborhood watch, legal issues. At church, I also assist our church members. They will call me, and it can be anything. Whether
Yes.
it's about rental issues and lots of.
Or their son being arrested.
Yes, it can be that as well, but obviously up to a point.
Yeah.
Because you cannot become personally involved, but you can advise them, no, this is how things work.
Yeah.
I'm a family man, really, so I spend a lot of time with my family.
Oh, you have children?
Yes, I've got 2 children, so I spend a lot of time with my family. Of late, the past, 2.5 months maybe, you know, because I got some shock news, I realized that, you know, as you're getting older, you need to, what's the word? Not quite keep fit, but you have to look after your body.
Yes.
And so I've been, you know, I'm regularly in the gym. If it's out of 7 days, I may have, say, 3 days in the gym, and maybe the other 2 or 3 days I would just walk,
Okay.
or jog, things like that.
And sir, speaking of your family, do they support your career? What you chose to do in life? Do they support it?
Look, my family, when I talk about not my immediate family, but look, when I say my immediate family, it would be my wife.
Yeah.
With my family, my mother and so on, my mother also always supported. Look, she's a very uncomplicated person, as you would understand. She was a tea lady with all respect. So she's not sophisticated, but she knows the work that I do. And she was happy. What I forgot to tell you, because you asked initially about, you didn't quite put it that way, but it's like, where did it start, your interest and so on. So remember I said the area that I live in was really a poor area.
Yeah.
So when I was a youngster at primary school, I always had, for some other reason, people would come to me and they would say, listen, I must apply for an ID. But people often do not know how, they didn't know how to fill out an application form.
Yes.
For whatever. So that's how I started. And then I realized, but I actually like this. Yes, the helping people was one of the parts, but the best part for me was like that you have to know what these things are saying. Sometimes it's legal documents. And so that's where my interest in the law sort of started. To understand, but sometimes I got across words that I didn't understand. And so I made my business. So I would, and then when I got that, then I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to do something where I can study these things, these legal documents, and I must be able to fill them out. That's really how it fundamentally started.
Yes.
And so, you know, I can't say that was always the case, because sometimes I felt, there was once where I felt like teaching. And then I think when I got to grade what is now grade 10, then I was filled. I said, no, there's nothing else. This is the one that I want to do. And so I just kept this one that I want to do. So yeah, so in terms of my family, supported my immediate family, yes. My wife, you know, my wife was also in the legal field, but she's changed. She's now in the teaching profession. But she loves what she does. And she says, look, it's not for her, and you have to be a certain type of person. But she supports me all the way. I must say the one negative, if I can put it that way, because you're asking now, I think she also feels that, look, it's time for something new.
Yes.
She's not necessarily saying it must be something completely different than law. But she's actually saying
The environment.
that maybe yes. The environment can be the same, but it can be maybe, change the environment, but it's still in the legal field. So she would say, for starters, maybe we go to another unit. Because she's, you know, sometimes you go home, you know, you pack the problems out. Today had a difficult time. So your wife must respond to it, and she says, you know, I hear about all these good things that you do, but you complain. then maybe you must get out.
Yeah.
But she's always says, whatever I do, she would support me. As long as she says, but you know, at the end of the month or the month when you come, I will see that it was at least in terms of the money.
Is there anything like pleasurable besides anything, nothing to do with law, that you always felt you've always wanted to do, but you haven't gotten around to doing it at all?
Okay, one thing that I really want to do, look, I don't always get the time maybe because of the money. Traveling. What I wanted to do was just to other when I'm not working and I'm not in law, I want to buy myself a nice, what do you call it now? So those years it was the caravels that you transport people. So I would drive from, I love traveling. But I mean by car. So I would go to Joburg, and I like to see the country. So there's a time when I used to travel a lot, not anymore. But yes, that is one thing I would like to do. That's more in terms of a job, I suppose, because it brings you income. But it's something simplistic. I don't know whether I will ever leave the law. I'm just too comfortable. I don't know. I would feel that there's something missing in my life. I know, sometimes one makes complicated for oneself. But why do you have to be so complicated? I mean, just ease up and just do something stupid sometimes. It doesn't have to be. I'm the type of person who find it really difficult. I find it sometimes difficult to relax, for example. But, recently when I was diagnosed with an illness, I'm sort of more open to that type of thing now. Which is for the good, because, and you can ask my family, they don't always know whether I'm now at work or whether I'm actually at home. Because they listen to me and they will say, no, but this is the talk that you would have at your office. So sometimes I have difficulty divorcing myself quite from work. So I would go home and I would speak, not fighting with people, but speaking as if not. But that fullness of his voice suggests
that authoritative
prosecutor, yes, that type of thing. I have difficulty with that. Look, that has to change.